I feel like Shelby should try to do the intro this time.
I don't know the intro.
We don't know the intro either.
I'm really bad at scripts.
Hip Laugh Love with Interning tea.
Okay, so should I try again? Or
Go
should
ahead.
you just, should we just give up? Because that's also an option.
Go. I
Okay.
demand that you make the intro this time.
Hello! Welcome to the Lip Laugh Love podcast, a podcast for bookworms by librarians.
Today, with Shelby, who is not normally part of this, but
Yes.
will be for the foreseeable future.
For the
For
week.
like what we can see. For the future we can see. But I'm Ingrid, I'm always here, and that is E.T., and she is also always here. And we do this once a week, usually, unless the audio is bad because we're learning. And we talk about all things libraries and bookish and fun.
Yes, fun.
So we just did an episode with Shelby about what it's like to be an archivist student.
Yes.
And we figured now we would do what it is like to be an archivist, point blank period.
Yes. As a career.
So you were about to tell us a little bit about the work you did before going to archivist school.
Yes, so the internships I did through my undergraduate degree and after that in my gap year between my undergrad and Simmons. I jumped into interning in archives very quickly after I realized that's the path I wanted to go on. I just recognized that it is one of those hands-on sort of things. And a great way to learn that is to actually do it and to speak to people in the field who are actively dealing with the different kind of problems and situations that arise when you're working with archival materials. My first internship, I worked at Harpers Ferry National Historical Park in the museum management program. They have a huge archive there, not only for the park, but they also house a copy of a lot of the collections from other national parks.
Oh boy.
They were like one of the repositories for, in case there were ever some kind of disaster, they have some copies there. So, a lot of material to work with. A lot of history.
People walking by in full period
Yes.
regalia.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there were reenactors all over the place and wearing hoop skirts and like the Civil War uniforms, that kind of stuff. So very
I love reenactors.
Yes. And then the main office was actually in the downtown portion of Harpers Ferry, which is still the old buildings from the Civil War era, and it was on the top floor of one of those buildings, one of those old buildings above one of the museums. So it was an extremely cool place to work. And wow, I cannot believe I got that opportunity.
Such an introduction to the thing you wanted to do.
Yeah,
also.
exactly. It was, yeah. And while I was there, I worked, I kind of worked by incrementally getting more responsibility. Makes a lot of sense, right? So I started by basically rehousing maps. They used to be in a flat file sort of situation, and then they decided to move them to a different type of storage, and so I was just basically taking it from one type of storage and putting it into another, so very basic skills.
I don't know if I've told you this actually, I spent a summer when I was an undergrad working for the conservationist at the Rare Books Library. Mm-hmm. And she had me put Mylar wrappings.
Oh, I love Mylar.
On
makes me happy.
Graham Greene's personal library that his family had donated to the library. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't even all his books, though he did have a copy of every book that he had written, which is a flex. But all of his books, I just measured and folded and wrapped them and put them back on the cart to be reshelved.
Yeah, I mean, it is
very repetitive.
It is very repetitive. It is a lot like gift wrapping, but with more expensive materials and materials that won't like have too much acid or, you know, deteriorate over time.
And also you can't buy a backup. You can't buy a replacement if
no.
if you mess it up.
It's true. Yeah. No pressure. Yeah, but yeah, I worked my way up and I eventually was handling some of their more valuable artifacts and manuscripts, and I was able to organize the collections and like a hierarchy and that kind of stuff. So it was a wonderful way to slowly learn more about the field that I was entering into. After that, I interned at a local county historical society. So a very different thing. The first archive was like a federal archive, like government archive, and then this is a local, like small town sort of archive. So a very different collection, very different patrons, so it was just like it was just another view and another way of thinking about archives there. So it was a really interesting way to like get an idea of how archives can vary as well as their similarities. Yeah.
Because it must just be like in libraries, I've found everyone has such a different feel to it.
Yeah, and they all have like their quirks, you know? Like they have a specific way of doing this and that, and preferences of like the librarians or archivists who are already there. And again, like the patrons can be very different. What they're going there to look for is...
So I think it would be helpful if we defined, or just like what we thought the differences were between libraries and archives.
Yes. So I think the biggest difference, and what most people would find like the more obvious difference when you're first looking at libraries and archives, is that libraries have published materials, right? So like books, magazines, they have like movies, like
cassette tapes in certain places.
So there are lots of copies and they're all equally good, you know what I mean? And you can replace those things if they get worn out, that kind of thing. And because of that, you're able to have a circulating collection where people can borrow things, take it home, enjoy it for a while, and bring it back. Whereas archives, they collect unique materials that are unpublished, by and large.
For the most part.
Yes. You can have, like, there's some crossover, too. That's another thing. Yeah, so they're collecting things like manuscripts, journals and diaries, photographs, so like things that typically there's only one copy, and that is the source of that particular subset of information, right? So that is the main difference. There are a few other differences, such as the way the collections are organized in libraries versus archives. So in libraries, you have like, you know, good old Dewey Decimal. You got
the alphabet.
Yeah, you have the alphabet. Yeah, so, and I think most people are fairly, you know, familiar with how this works. When you go to a library, you can look under, like, author's last name. There's sort of an overarching, like, genre, I guess. So, like, fiction, nonfiction, etc.
Mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
Children's materials, board books,
exactly,
all that good stuff.
Yeah, and so it's organized in that way. Archives are quite different, and there's a lot of theory that goes into this and a long history behind it. But basically, the way that archives collect and organize things is by the whoever donated it or where it came from. So this is called provenance. And, oh yeah, buzzword, vocab word for the day. Basically, the idea is that we're collecting from a specific perspective on a time, on a place, from like a person, or it could be from a company, it could be from an estate, but it's all coming from the same source, and that's how it's kept together as like a logical unit, right? Yeah.
I've definitely told you about this before, but I took a really cool course when I was at Simmons on archives and like living memory. And one of the examples that they gave was a like specific Canadian tribe that wanted to digitize their history, but wanted to also like give different access to people who are at different levels in their like journey towards adulthood.
Yes.
So you'd have like the base access that like people, children, anybody could access, and then like tribal elders had different sets of information that they could access.
Yes.
And that kind of blew my mind because for libraries, it's all about like open access.
Yes.
And like the instinct is like, well, everyone can have everything. And I thought it was just really cool that, you know, there are cultural and historical and logical reasons to organize information in different ways in specialized collections in that way.
Exactly. So like there could be sensitive information. So like the family donated all these papers from like grandma, but there might be some like very personal information in there. And like grandma's friends are still around, and like, you know, the family is still living and everything. So having that very personal information out there right now might not be like one of the things the family wants. They still want to donate the collection so that it can be protected and preserved, but they don't necessarily want all of grandma's dirty little secrets out in the world right now. So sometimes they have
Elizabeth looks shocked. She's like, what is this example? What did grandma do?
What are her secrets?
Grandma. Yeah, but like they might have like a deal basically when they donated the collection that like these certain parts of it might be like not viewable to the public for 20, maybe 50 years, something like that. So like the deals can be made when you do that. There's also instances of stuff like in government archives specifically where it is legally like a law that these particular documents from these sources can't be shared with the general public for a specific amount of time, right? Yeah. So for instance,
top secret.
Yes. Yeah. So, for instance, a lot of the government records about the Cold War are recently, or like very currently, being opened up for public access for the first time because the 50-year like period is you know turning over and everything.
Picturing that like it's a kitchen clock. Like
one
of those little like roosters that you...
Yeah, the timer's up. Yeah, exactly. So like you can you can now research the Jfk assassination in a way that you could not do 10 years ago. Yes. There are more, exactly.
Does that mean there are more conspiracy theories or fewer?
Yes. Yeah, so, and that's part of what keeps like, I don't know, like history research interesting is that there's all these new things to be found too, so.
New old things.
Yeah, new old things. Yeah.
It's never over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also that's the other part of archives that I think could be pretty fun is it's kind of a treasure hunt for a researcher, you know, because like there's potentially plenty of materials in there that nobody who is interested has ever seen. You know what I mean? And it might be something that provides like a tidbit of information that has not been published before. People don't know about it. And so it's just a treasure trove, and I love that about it. More buzzies.
You're making me want to go into archives. I'm going to switch my track.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
It's so fun. Do it. Or intern, you know, dip your foot in.
Yeah. I'd definitely do an internship.
Yeah. Anyway, before I convert anyone else. Yes.
Since you're kind of a historian too, do you have a favorite era or place?
Oh yeah. Yeah, so my undergraduate degree was technically a history degree with a public history track within it. So I had to choose a specific like subset of history that I was interested in. And It's Cold War history. I love Cold War history.
That's
this
not
is
what
not
I was
a surprise.
expecting, actually.
It isn't?
I was expecting it to be something with like fun dresses with their little waists and like
I love fun dresses.
skirts and
yes, but
Cold War.
Cold War.
That was the bottom of my list.
Specifically, less on the political side, but more on the social side. So I was very interested in like feminism and like advances in like social structure and everything, and the way people were redefining like who they were at this particular moment in time, and then also the pressures of constantly fearing like you might die. You know, little things like that.
To loop this into books that we've read and things like that, yes. I was expecting it to be either something Outlander-y or whatever time travel is involved in the Witches series that you just told me to read.
Yeah, Tudor.
Or
well, actually, it is Beekman. But anyway, yeah, like, yeah, older. You're expecting like
it to be older.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of different interests in history, but that's just what I specialize in then.
Just like I'm just really interested.
Yeah, I took some Russian history classes. You know, the light,
cool,
fluffy ones. Yeah, very cool.
I think ease of access is also something that we should probably discuss when it comes to archives and libraries.
Absolutely.
Because libraries, even most... Okay, for public libraries specifically, so like not necessarily special collections or school libraries or anything like that, but public libraries, you can just walk up and like go inside.
Yeah.
And no one's going to ask you for ID, no one's going to like... pay too much attention to you. You are there. You're
welcome.
You are allowed to be there.
Yeah.
You are encouraged to be there. You can stay there as long as you want without giving away any information or paying any money. And I think that's kind of one of the things that I love the most about public libraries.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It's a community space that is. I mean, it's one of the last places you
around culture.
Yeah. And also, it's like one of the last places you can be without having to buy something. Like, you can't go into a coffee shop and just, like, enjoy the ambiance.
Yeah.
They might kick you out.
Yeah. And also, it just comes across as rude to us.
Yeah.
But, like, libraries, that's not rude. That's
libraries,
encouraged.
we want you there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, obviously, there are rules, but, like...
Yeah, of course. But by and large, people are welcome. It's open access. And, yeah, you borrow a book. Go for it. It's free.
Or just sit there and read the whole book.
Yeah.
You can do that too.
Yeah, exactly.
And nobody's going to get mad because you weren't going to pay for it.
Yeah. Libraries are wonderful, and, like, I think they should always be that way. It's great. But archives are different, and it's because it loops back to that idea of what they collect. So, again, with libraries, they're published materials. They're ultimately replaceable, you know? So, like, you have, like, a copy of Pride and Prejudice that a bunch of people check out and really enjoy, but eventually gets beat up.
Or I just check out 100 times.
Yeah.
Really enjoy each time.
Yeah. We've been watching a lot of Pride and Prejudice lately.
We have. It's great.
Yeah, but eventually gets beat up, but you can replace the copy and get the same content again for the patrons to continue using and enjoying. For archives, because they're irreplaceable, they're unique, there's less open access to it.
So typically you have to call ahead of time.
Set up an appointment.
Yeah. Give your name and reason for being there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so...
Even if that reason is just curiosity.
Yeah,
like, I'm not saying this as a, like, you can't go to the archive. Like, go to the archive.
Yeah, go to the archive. It also depends on the archive, too. But, like, by and large, how it works is that, yeah, you contact the archivist. There's, like, an email or a phone number that you call, and you let them know you're interested in visiting the collection. You set up an appointment for, you know, a specific date and time, and you let them know what you're interested in researching so that they can pull that information for you to look through. And then when you get there, you usually... you know, they tell you the rules. It's stuff like don't write on the original materials.
I feel like most places you're not even allowed to have pens with you.
Yeah, no.
You have to have a pencil.
A lot of the time, yeah, or they'll provide the pencil for you, so not even bring in your own. Or you could just use your laptop, stuff like that. There's also different rules that they have on, like, if you're allowed to photograph things, if they provide photocopies for a fee or for free. that kind of thing. So yeah, it is definitely more structured.
And I feel like the
a lot
rules are actually enforced.
Yes, they
Whereas
are actually
most of the time
enforced.
if you're in a library, there are rules, but people don't really follow them.
Yeah, oh, and yeah, it's a little bit more of just like, there's the rules that are written down, and then there are the rules as they are actually enforced and followed.
And how little the librarian wants to go up to you and tell you to put your shoes back on.
Yeah, and gross.
Like little things.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's usually going to be an archivist in the room with you, maybe doing their own work or whatever. So it's definitely more structured, and I think that can be very intimidating for people, especially when they've never been to an archive before. But what it comes down to is like the archivist and these rules are there to protect things from being damaged so that other researchers can enjoy it in the future, and that information isn't lost. They're basically a protector of this information, and so they act like a mama bear over her little cubs, except it's like thousands and thousands of pieces of paper. Yeah.
Cutest cub around.
Yeah. My advice to anyone who wants to go to an archive and do research is to not let that intimidate you. It's really not that intimidating when you actually do it. Just reach out to the archivist. Tell them why you're interested in coming to see their collection. Tell them what you want to research. Most of the time, they're interested too. And they want to know what you find, and they want to learn from you and what you gleaned from their collection. So it's really it's really cool. You can end up having a fun conversation with someone who's mutually interested and someone who knows the materials of the whole collection, who can give you advice on like, you know what, if you're interested in this might interest you as well. So it's like, yeah, you get a little bit of reference in there. You get a little,
We love adding a little bit of reference.
Yeah, cheeky little reference. I say just like find something that interests you, something that you want to know more about. It doesn't have to be something serious. You don't have to write the next great nonfiction bestseller, but you just...
If you want to, though, go right ahead.
Yeah. I
dedicated to us. There's 3 of us.
Yes.
Shelby, Ingrid, Elizabeth.
Yeah, but just find something you're interested in and go for it. It's what do you have to lose other than, an afternoon
spent
lost
in a cool
in
spot.
Beautiful research.
Yeah. And I think it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding too. Like, I wish that I had gone more to the archives in my undergrad, because I wrote a paper about Charlotte Bronte's Juvenilia, the little stories that she wrote when she was 14. And our library had one, and it was I got to see it, and it was like going to a museum, but much more intimate, because I got to hold it and flip through with gloves. It was so cool.
We love the white gloves.
Love the white gloves.
They're a look.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's coming back in fashion. I don't know if you guys noticed.
They also, I know for undergrad, at least where I was, we would have exhibits.
Yes.
So I got to be a student curator on one of them, which was really cool. And then they have opening night, and they invite students. It's pretty much, that is the time when, at that specific archive, where the part of the collection would be open for viewing.
Yeah.
So it did become a museum also. You could just go in and just wander around and read what students had written, and read what the plaque said, see what was presented. We got to request things from the VPL, or request items from other places. And it was just, it's really, I don't know, I think there are ways to access certain archives that are less barred to entry.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that having that interaction with history, so not just viewing it as it's something that happened and it's just this dry, dead thing that's been repeated over and over again. It's actually
weight in modern life.
Yeah, exactly. I view history as much more than that. There's so many different perspectives and ways of thinking about what happened, and ways of presenting that to people. And I think you can really feel that when you are looking at someone's personal papers, or or even just like comparing different collections, you can really see that history come to life, and it makes it so much more interesting than like flipping through your textbook on, you know, the Revolutionary War, you know? So I think it's just a great way to get people engaged with history and their community, and yeah, good things all around.
I love that.
We can talk about similarities too.
Similarities, yeah.
Yeah, because we're like going on and on about how it's different.
I think
but
there are more differences.
I don't know.
Oh,
I mean,
okay,
like
go
I
off.
think
Let's go.
I think that ultimately they have similar purposes, right? It is ultimately providing information to people to view. The way they protect it is different, for sure. Yeah, so like you have the library, which is like the mission is to have open access to information for anyone, for all. So like if someone wants to learn about something, they can go to the library and read all these books about it. That's so cool. Whereas like archives, it's a similar thing, but it's just their mission is more about preserving that information for future generations so that it lasts longer, and it's there for posterity.
So I think like mission statements of any two libraries and archives would probably be pretty similar. Mm-hmm. But libraries are patron focused.
Yes.
And archives are item focused.
Exactly. I think that's a very good way to put it. And then also there's crossover. A lot of libraries have archives. A lot of archives have libraries, and sometimes the librarian is the archivist, and vice versa. So I mean, you've experienced this, you know, like, yeah. And so have I. Like I've worked in the Boston Public Library. Like that was my internship during my Simmons degree. But I was working in an archive within the library.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's this crossover of like the disciplines where...
Which is why we took classes together.
Exactly. It's the same degree. If they were really that dissimilar,
we'd have a completely different...
Yeah, exactly.
Under a different master's header.
Yeah. We just like information.
We're nerds.
We're nerds. Yeah. So I think it just...
To end on a more together note.
Yeah, we're together. We're friends.
Note.
Yeah. Yeah. So like we've spent a lot of time talking about differences, and that's really interesting, but they are ultimately
pursuing the same goal.
Same goals.
Sister,
elbow touch.
Sister. Sorry, I'm gonna get that stuck in my own head, so I will not continue and get it stuck in yours. Why don't you take us off? Take us home, Elizabeth.
Bring it on home.
If you have any questions for Shelby or for us, you can leave them in the comments, or you can email us at liblaughlovepod@gmail.com. And we'd love to hear from you.
Yay!
Yes! Yay!
Thank you for listening/watching.
Yes,
we really appreciate it.